Boom! Ha ha ha! Hey, how you doing? I'm Thundercloud. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to Chillin Tuesday on this Tuesday, the 20th of August, 2024. I'm here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame in Guyra in the Seahorse Medicine Cafe, and I've got a show for you tonight of Banjo Paterson's poetry from 1896 and also a little bit of Bruce Dawe, who passed away in 2020, only a couple of weeks, well, not even, only a week or so after I opened the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame in March 2020. Bruce Dawe passed away on the 1st of April 2020. So I'll be reading a couple of his tonight. But it is Chillin Tuesday after all, and we're going to start with the weather. Why not? Because I'm Thundercloud. There's no thunder about apart from me. It's going to be 20... No, it's not going to be 20. No, tomorrow it's going to be 16 degrees. But later on in the week, it's going to be 20 degrees. Apparently, on Sunday and Monday next week, it's going to get as warm as 20 degrees in Guyra in winter. That's a heat wave. Wow, cool. Not hot. Yeah, okay, you know what I mean. It's currently 12.2 and it feels like 9.8 outside. Today, we had a maximum of around about 18.6 today. It was 18.6. That's pretty lovely for Guyra. Yeah, I was in shorts today. So they're predicting 16 tomorrow, but there will be a bit more wind about and a few clouds. So whatever the weather is where you are, look it up yourself. I don't have time to do the whole world. No. But anyway, now let's get the show underway. And I'm going to start with the Bruce Dawe book here. And this was Bruce Dawe's poetry from 1990 through to 1995. And the name of the book is called Mortal Instruments. It was published by Longman Press in 1996. All right, the first one I'm going to do for you is one that I really fell upon today. I was looking for something to write down onto the Bruce Dawe portrait that I've got out there in the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame, and I stumbled across this one, which is called Bad Poems. Yeah, and so yeah, keep that in mind. This is about bad poems. Unsung, unsingable, they lie together, who were starveling born, cast out upon the hill to die, victims of many a Spartan dawn. Yet each fulfilled its role as well as any that lived on to touch the heart as clapper strokes the bell. Their little was the source of much. Weak as they were, they served the strong in wars where blood flowed from the pen. Who should not but accord them song? From Shakespeare to the least of men. Art's laws are just, and yet severe. They rule the mind's platonic state. But each Athenian owes a tear to crippled poems that pointed straight. Bad Poems by Bruce Dawe. All right, well, as I said, it's Chillin Tuesday, and tonight I'm doing a Banjo Paterson special from the year 1896. He didn't write a hell of a lot of poems that year, but he did write enough for a whole poetry show on a Tuesday night in 2024. And speaking of not a hell of a lot of poems, this one is called Hey, Hell and Booligal. You come and see me, boys, he said. you'll find a welcome and a bed, and whiskey any time you call, although our township hasn't got the name of quite a lively spot. You see, I live in Booligal, and people have an awful down upon the district and the town, which worse than hell itself they call. In fact, the saying far and wide along the Riverina side is hay and hell and Booligal. No doubt, it suits them very well to say it's worse than hay or hell. But don't you heed their talk at all. Of course there's heat. No one denies, and sand and dust and stacks of flies and rabbits too at Booligal. But such a pleasant, quiet place, you'd never see a stranger's face. They'd hardly ever care to call. The drovers must mostly pass it by. They reckon that they'd rather die than spend the night in Booligal. The big mosquitoes frighten some. You'll lie awake to hear 'em hum, and snakes about the township crawl. But shearers, when they get their check, they never come along and wreck the blessed town of Booligal. But down in Hay, the shearers come and fill themselves with fighting rum and chase blue devils up the wall and fight the snaggers every day until there is the juice to pay. There's none of that in Booligal. Of course, there isn't much to see. The billiard table used to be the great attraction for us all until some careless drunken curs got sleeping on it in their spurs and ruined it in Booligal. Just now there is a howling drought that pretty near has starved us out. It never seems to rain at all, but if there should come any rain, you couldn't cross the black soil plain. You'd have to stop in Booligal. We'd have to stop with bated breath. We prayed that both in life and death our fate in other lines might fall. Oh, send us to our just reward in hay or hell. But gracious Lord, deliver us from Booligal. It must be a pretty awful place, I reckon. Well, that was published in the Bulletin on the 25th of April, 1896. So the next one is called Out of Sight. It was first published on the 16th of May on the back of the Rose Hill Races card at the Rose Hill Race Course, where obviously out of sight. They held a polo meeting in a little country town, and all the local sportsmen came to win themselves renown. There came two strangers with a horse, and I am much afraid. They both belong to what is called the Take You Down Brigade. They said their horse could jump like fun and asked an amateur to ride him in the steeplechase and told him they were sure the last time round he'd sail away with such a swallow's flight the rest would never see him go. He'd finish out of sight. So out he went, and when folks saw the amateur was up, some local genius called the race the Dude in Danger Cup. The horse was known as Who's Afraid by panic from the fright, but his owners told the jock he'd finish out of sight. And so he did, for Who's Afraid, without the least pretence, disposed of him by rushing through the very second fence. And when they ran the last time round, the prophecy was right, for he was in the ambulance and safely out of sight. Yeah, all right. Funny. Out of sight. All right, the next one, Mulga Bill's bicycle. And I know this one pretty well. 'Twas Mulga Bill from Eaglehawk that caught the cycling craze. He turned away his good old horse that served him many days. He dressed himself in cycling clothes, resplendent to be seen, and hurried off to town and bought a shining new machine. And as he wheeled it through the door with air of lordly pride, the grinning shop assistant said, "Excuse me, can you ride?" "See here, young man," said Mulga Bill, "from Walgett to the sea, from Conroy's Gap to Castlereagh, there's none can ride like me. I'm good all round at everything, as everybody knows. Although I'm not the one to talk, I hate a man that blows. But riding is my special gift, my chiefest sole delight. Just ask a wild duck, can it swim? A wild cat, can it fight? There's nothing clothed in hen or hide or built of flesh or steel. There's nothing walks or jumps or runs on axe or hoof or wheel. But what I'll sit, while hide will hold, and girths and straps are tight, I'll ride this here two-wheeled concern right straight away at sight." 'Twas Mulga Bill from Eaglehawk that sought his own abode, that perched above the Deadman's Creek, beside the mountain road. He turned the cycle down the hill and mounted for the fray. But ere he'd gone a dozen yards, it bolted clean away. It left the track and through the trees just like a silver streak. It whistled down the awful slope towards the Deadman's Creek. It shaved a stump by half an inch, it dodged a big white box. The very wallaroos in fright went scrambling up the rocks. The wombats, hiding in their caves, dug deeper underground, as Mulga Bill, as wide as chalk, sat tight to every bound. It struck a stone and gave a spring that cleared a fallen tree. It raced beside a precipice, as close could be. And then, as Mulga Bill let out one last despairing shriek, it made a leap of 20 feet into the Dead Man's Creek. 'Twas Mulga Bill from Eaglehawk that slowly swam ashore. He said, "I've had some narrow shaves and lively rides before. I rode a wild bull round a yard to win a £5 bet, but this was sure the darndest ride that I've encountered yet. I'll give that two-wheeled outlaw best. It's shaken all me nerve to feel it whistle through the air and plunge and buck and swerve. It's safe at rest in Dead Man's Creek. We'll leave it lying still. A horse's back is good enough henceforth for Mulga Bill." Oh, I think that's probably my most favourite Banjo Paterson poem of all times, probably because I was read it quite a lot as a kid, and it's got a really cool book with cool illustrations and stuff like that. It's just cool. It's a good adventure, and it's exciting as he's flying down through that bush, and there's wombats and kangaroos and all kinds of stuff like that. And I also remember seeing it when I was young at a bushwhackers show back in the 70s, and when it dodged a big white box, they were acting it out, and someone threw an actual white box onto stage, cardboard box. But of course, Mulga Bill, he was dodging a white box tree, kind of gum tree, yeah. Okay, well, now, as you probably know, or maybe not, I've published a lot of my poetry. One of those books being Jan Bung's Peaceful Protest in Nimbin. And I'm going to read to you out of that. And this is one called Three Carpet Pythons. A carpet python was laying on a dead tree. As I went to dig holes for new river trees, we planted rainforest trees down by the creek, and a new home for pythons started this week. A river full of trees looks from the sky like a python of patchwork trees flowing by. I drove in the night and was caught by surprise, a baby carpet python on the road before my eyes. I stopped to usher him off the road, not wanting him to be squashed like a cane toad. In fear, he struck and lashed out at me. I ushered him off with a branch of a tree. We went towards the creek where we'd planted his home. Python 1 had a friend and he wouldn't be alone. I read my friend's post, and to my surprise, she'd put a photo of a carpet python in front of my eyes. 3 carpet snakes, there must be a healing. That's what friends are for. Truth telling about feelings. 3 carpet pythons on, not playing games. Thundercloud bring rains and life grows again. And a carpet python rainbow after the rain has washed away garbage and all the pain. Rain brings new life and grows the tree. The carpet pythons now have a home to live peacefully. Yeah, that's true. And I love the carpet pythons. They're such a gentle, placid snake or python they are. So Jan Bung's Peaceful Protest in Nimbin is available on Amazon. Look it up. Jan Bung's, it's a Bundjalung word for platypus. Look it up. I'll leave a link in the description below. But there's also Poetry to End Prohibition, Love in Nimbin, and Lust in Nimbin, all available on Amazon. Something like that. Amazon, you know. You can also buy them from me directly. So if you want to just send me a message, and I'll give you the straight up price, where Jeff Bezos doesn't get any money from them. Well, probably does, because they were printed from Amazon. But at least, you know, the money will come back to me if you buy my poetry, and you can enjoy my poetry anytime you want then. Yeah. But what I do have, and this is coming out very, 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 very soon, if I can find the book, which I can't. There it is. It's in the book in the book. I put it in the book, under the book. And this is Thunderzine number 1. Thunderzine number 1. Yes, it's coming out very, very soon. Will I read to you a little bit out of here? Okay. Anarchy haiku. Bumbling old throne rust. Freedom's wild wind calling you. Order rises up. That's it. All right. Thunderzine, but there's plenty of like cool artwork, and it's very colourful and psychedelic, kind of surrealist artwork, I should say, not psychedelic, surreal. Yeah. Anyway, check it out and come and pop in here to the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame, and you can get your own copy, or I can post it out to you if you want as well. Anyway, send me a message if you want one. In the description, say, hey, Thundercloud, I want Thunderzine number 1, because it's number 1. It's the first one ever. Yes, that's right. The next one, With the Cattle. Oh, but first, let me have a sip of my tea from this Australian Poetry Hall of Fame mug here. And these are available from the website, australianpoetryhalloffame.com.au, the shop there. The link will be in the description. Yummy, yummy, refreshing, and wetting the whistle. Okay, and don't forget, there are also only 6 weeks left for entries in the Australian Poetry Film Contest. Yes, there are 3 categories: Best Australian Poetry Film, Best Australian Bush Poetry Film, and Best Student Poetry Film. So check it out. The link's in the description. I'm also raising money for prizes for the Australian Poetry Film Contest. So if you're a generous benefactor and you would like to see our poets and filmmakers receive decent prizes for their poetry films that they're making for the Australian Poetry Film Contest. The link below to GoFundMe is right down below, actually, or wherever the description is on your computer that you're watching this from. Yeah, that's right. Oh, goodness gracious. My beard keeps hitting the microphone. I'm going to have to somehow sort that one out. Maybe I'll tuck my beard in. How about? We'll see how we go. All right, With the Cattle by Banjo Paterson. The drought is down on field and flock, the riverbed is dry, and we shift the starving stock before the cattle die. We muster up with weary hearts at breaking of the day, and turn our heads to foreign parts to take the stock away. And it's hunt 'em up and dog 'em, and it's get the whip and flog 'em, for its weary work is droven when they're dying every day. By our stock roots bare and eaten, on dusty roads and beaten, with half a chance to save their lives, we take the stock away. We cannot use the whip for shame on beasts that crawl along. We have to drop the weak and lame and try to save the strong. The wrath of God is on the track, the drought fiend holds his sway. With blows and cries and stock whip crack, we take the stock away. As they fall, we leave them lying, with crows to watch them dying. Grim sextons of the overland that fasten on their prey by the fiery dust storm drifting, and the mocking mirage shifting. In the heat and drought and hopeless pain, we take the stock away. In dull despair the days go by, with never hope of change, but every stage we draw more nigh toward the mountain range. And some may live to climb the pass and reach the great plateau, and revel in the mountain grass by streamlets fed with snow. As the mountain wind is blowing, it starts the cattle lowing, and calling to each other down the dusty long array. And there speaks a grizzled drover. Well, thank God the worst is over. The creatures smell the mountain grass that's 20 miles away. They press toward the mountain grass. They look with eager eyes along the rugged stony pass that slopes towards the skies. Their feet may bleed from rocks and stones, but through the blood drop starts. They struggle on with stifled groans, for hope is in their hearts. And the cattle that are leading, though their feet are worn and bleeding, are breaking to a kind of run. Pull up and let them go, for the mountain wind is blowing and the mountain grass is growing. They settle down by running streams, ice cold with melted snow. The days are done of heat and drought upon the stricken plain. The wind has shifted right about and brought the welcome rain. The river runs with sullen roar, all flecked with yellow foam, and we must take the road once more to bring the cattle home. And its lads will raise a chorus. There's a pleasant trip before us, and the horses bound beneath us as we start them down the track. And the drovers canter singing through the sweet green grasses springing towards the far-off mountain land to bring the cattle back. Are these beasts we brought away that move so lively now? They scatter off like flying spray across the mountain's brow and dash down the rugged range. We hear the stock whip crack. Good faith, it is a welcome change to bring such cattle back. And it's steady down the lead there, and it's let them stop and feed there, for they're wild as mountain eagles, and their sides are all afoam. but they're settling down already, and they'll travel nice and steady. With cheery call and jest and song, we fetch the cattle home. We have to watch them close at night, for fear they'll make a rush and break away in headlong flight across the open bush. And by the campfire's cheery blaze, with mellow voice and strong, we hear the lonely watchman raise the overlander's song. Oh, it's when we're done with roving, with the camping and the droving, it's homeward down the Bland we'll go, and nevermore we'll roam, while the stars shine out above us like the eyes of those who love us, the eyes of those who watch and wait to greet the cattle home. The plains are all awave with grass, the skies are deepest blue, and leisurely the cattle pass and feed the long day through. But when we sight the station gate, we make the stop whips crack, and welcome sound to those who wait to greet the cattle back. And through the twilight falling, we hear their voices calling as the cattle splash across the ford and churn it into foam. And the children run to meet us, and our wives and sweethearts greet us. They're heroes from the overland who brought the cattle home. And that was published in the Australian Pastoralists Review on the 15th of September 1896. Right now, I'm going to read you some more of Bruce Dawe from Mortal Instruments. The first one, Habits of Imperfection. We write as we eat, spilling sugar between sugar bowl and cup, dipping the onion knife in the fresh butter, getting instant coffee granules in the powdered milk, spreading crumbs from the unsliced bread loaf over the Laminex tabletop, distributing soup-like footprints over our shirt fronts, leaving a puddle of tea, smiling up from the shocked saucer, sporting a milk moustache after swigging from the carton. And if they tell us that what we need most is a serviette, a bib, or perhaps even a bell tent, and a sharper taste for the niceties, what we would say, speaking around another mouthful, is chacun a son goût, considerable, consider us incorrigible, and after you with the mustard. The next one, Time Bandits, or Romancing the Stoned. This is for Tom. Don't you just love those poets who read as if they aren't really one of a team, but are, in fact, undercover geniuses whose cover gets blown by the relatively favourable audience reaction to their very first poem, making it the first jet in a seemingly endless golden stream of other poems, equally calculated, or so she hopes, to have those later poets to the particular evening's entertainment. Hanging like a bum of the month fighters on the Madison Square ropes. Or better still, throwing in the towel by cutting down their own share of the reading time. to the point where they will seem to be greedy as bulimia victims if they indulge themselves in anything more than 4 lines of undistinguished rhyme, and begin to feel that, in all honesty, they should apologise for even daring to so much as appear on the same program as the only natural, fat-free, multi-grain, audience-approved performer here. A performer who, but for an innate sense of modesty, would and could go on reading until the cows come home, like those cattle across the sands of Dee, where Mary's voice is soon muffled by the cruel, crawling foam. Now, beginning to build up in the corners of the mouth of the said poetic herds person, a sure sign that whatever one's previous experience of long literary evenings out of which the corporate energy has gone, this is obviously going to be a worsen. And since you're all just sitting up there on the stage like so many stale bottles of what's the name, there's nowhere to go and do nothing except think over and over what a real crying shame it is that you ever said yes to the invitation to read at this particular August assembly of poets flowing in from all over when you might more profitably have put your time in at home with the telly, watching Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspurs contending at Wembley and singing along with the intervening commercials, as though each was the most recent highly acclaimed creative output of a long-time friend. When actually the main appeal of such ads is that, unlike the poet who invariably says, after exceeding her allotted span by some 30 minutes or so, I've just got a couple of other poems I'd love to share with you if you'd care to hear them. The commercials are short and do mercifully come to an end. Yeah, I guess that's something to be aware of when delivering poetry, is the audience engagement. If the audience is bored and you're not engaging them, then it's you're losing them, aren't you? It's what's the point? So yeah, making sure that you connect with the audience while you're doing your poetry is something really difficult. So yeah, making sure you're really looking at them, speaking to them themselves, and of course me reading them out to you. Yeah, I've got to make sure that I look up and that kind of stuff, because yeah. All right, well that's Bruce Dawe's poetry here, and I'm back onto Banjo Paterson. This one is from December 1896, and it was published in the Bulletin on the 12th of December, and it's about it's called The Song of the Artesian Water, and it's about the drillers who go out there and drill down, and they brought water to the surface. And now apparently we've got like 100,000 years worth of geothermal energy under this earth in Australia that they could just like drill down into and get hotness from there to heat up a liquid, which could be used to turn a turbine, which could make to make steam to turn a turbine to make energy, and like that's all free. Imagine that, and yeah. So instead of like putting really big, ugly, windmills or coal or nuclear or even big, huge solar farms, we could actually have these little plants of geothermal. Yeah, so I believe the technology's there and it could be free and forever, really, and very cheap. No reason we need to be paying giant electricity bills except to support big energy companies, really, to rip off the people. But hey, that's my 2 cents of political comment tonight. Song of the Artesian Water by Banjo Paterson. Now the stock have started dying, for the Lord has sent a drought. We're sick of prayers and providence, we're going to do without. With the derricks up above us and the solid earth below, we are waiting at the lever for the word to let her to. Sinking down, deeper down, oh, we'll sink it deeper down as the drill is plunging downward at 1,000 feet of level. If the Lord won't send us water, oh, we'll get it from the devil, yet we'll get it from the devil deeper down. Now, our engine's built in Glasgow by a very canny Scot, and he marked it 20 horsepower, but he don't know what is what. When Canadian billers firing in the sun-dried gidgee logs, she can equal 30 horses and a score or so of dogs. Sinking down, deeper down, oh, we're going deeper down. If we fail to get the water, then it's ruin to the squatter, for the drought is in the station and the water's growing hotter, but we're bound to get the water deeper down. But the shaft has started caving and the sinking's very slow, and the yellow rods are bending in the water down below, and the tubes are always jamming and they can't be made to shift till we nearly burst the engine with a 40 horsepower lift. Sinking down, deeper down, oh, we're going deeper down. Though the shaft is always caving and the tubes are always jamming, yet we'll fight our way to water while the stubborn drill is ramming, deeper down. But there's no artesian water, though we've passed 3,000 feet. And the contract price is growing and the boss is nearly beat. But it must be down beneath us, and it's down we've got to go, though she's bumping in the solid rock 4,000 feet below. Sinking down, deeper down, oh, we're going deeper down. And it's time they heard us knocking on the roof of Satan's dwelling. But we'll get artesian water if we cave the roof of hell in. Oh, we'll get artesian water deeper down. But it's hark, the whistle's blowing with a wild, exultant blast, and the boys are madly cheering, for they've struck the flow at last, and it's rushing up the tubing from 4,000 feet below till it spouts above the casing in a 1,000,000-gallon flow. And it's down, deeper down. Oh, it comes from deeper down. It is flowing, ever flowing in a free, unstinted measure from the silent, hidden places where the old earth hides her treasure, deeper down. And it's clear away the timber, and it's let the water run, how it glimmers in the shadow, how it flashes in the sun. By the silent belts of timber, by the miles of blazing plain, it is bringing hope and comfort to the thirsty land again. Flowing down, deeper down, it is flowing further down, to the tortured, thirsty cattle, bringing gladness in its going. Through the droughty days of summer, it is flowing, ever flowing. It is flowing, ever flowing further down. And that was published in the Bulletin on the 12th of December, 1896. All right. Coming up on the 21st of September, we've got Fiore Music Harley returning to the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame. So stay tuned for updates on that. Yes, sirree. Or madam. All rightio. Shouting for a Camel is the next one. Shouting, that's the Aussie tradition of buying someone a drink. And a camel, or someone who probably drinks a lot, I reckon. It was over at Coolgardie that a mining speculator who was going down the township just to make a bit of chink went off to hire a camel from a camel propagator, and the Afghan said he'd landed if he'd stand the beast a drink. Yes, the only price he asked him was to stand the beast a drink. It was cheap, very cheap, as dromedaries go. So, the mining speculator made the bargain, proudly thinking he had bested old Mohammed. He had done him in the eye. Then he clambered on the camel, and while the beast was drinking, he explained the situation to the miners standing by. That 'twas cheap, very cheap, as dromedaries go. But the camel kept on drinking, and he filled his hold with water. And the more he had inside him, yet the more he seemed to need. For he drank it by the gallon, and his girths grew taut and tauter. And the miners muttered softly, yes, he's very dry indeed. But he's cheap, very cheap, as the dromedaries go. So he drank up 20 buckets. It was weird to watch him suck it. And the market price for water was per bucket, £0.50. Then the speculator stopped him, saying, not another bucket. If I give him any more, there'll be a famine in the town. Take him back to old Mohammed, and I'll tramp him through the town. He was cheap, very cheap, as speculators go. There's a moral to this story. In your hat, you ought to paste it, be careful whom you shout for when a camel is about. And there's plenty human camels who, before they'll see you waste it, will drink up all you'll pay for if you're fool enough to shout. If you chance to strike a camel when you're fool enough to shout, you'll be cheap, very cheap, as the speculators go. Yeah. So yeah, be careful who you shout. Don't shout a camel. All right. The next one I've got for you is the story of Mongrel Grey. This is the story the stockman told. On the cattle camp where the stars were bright, the moon rose up like a globe of gold and flooded the plain with a mellow light. We watched the cattle till dawn of day, and he told me the story of Mongrel Grey. He was a knockabout station hack, spurred and walloped and banged and beat, ridden all day with a sore on his back, left at night with nothing to eat. That was a matter of every day, common occurrence to Mongrel Grey. Perhaps we'd have sold him, but someone heard he was bred out back on a flooded run where he learnt to swim like a water bird. Midnight or midday were all as one. In the flooded ground he could find his way. Nothing could puzzle old Mongrel Grey. 'Tis a special gift that some horses learn. When the floods are out, they will splash along in girth-deep water and twist and turn from hidden channel and billabong, never mistaking the road to go, for a man may guess, but the horses know. I was camping out with my youngest son. Bit of a nipper, just learnt to speak in an empty hut on the lower run, shooting and fishing in Conroy's Creek. The youngster toddled about all day, and with our horses was Mongrel Grey. All of a sudden the flood came down, fresh from the hills with the mountain rain, roaring and eddying rank and brown over the flats across the plain, rising and falling, fall of night. Nothing but water appeared in sight. It is a nasty place when the floods are out, even in daylight, for all about. Channels and billabongs twist about, stretching for miles in the flooded ground, and to move was a hopeless thing to try in the dark with the water just racing by. I had to try it. I heard a roar and the wind swept down with the blinding rain, and the water rose till it reached the floor of our highest room, and 'twas very plain that way the water was sweeping down, we must shift for the highlands at once or drown. Off to the stable I splashed and found the horses shaking with cold and fright. I let 'em down to the lower ground, but never a yard would they swim that night. They reared and snorted and turned away, and none would face it but Mongrel Grey. I bound the child on the horse's back, and we started off with a prayer to heaven. Through the rain and the wind and the pitchy black, for I knew that the instinct God has given to guide his creatures by night and day would lead the footsteps of Mongrel Grey. He struck deep water at once and swam. I swam beside him and held his mane till we touched the bank of a broken dam in shallow water, then off again. Swimming in darkness across the flood, rank with the smell of drifting mud. He turned and twisted across the back, choosing the places to wade or swim, picking the safest and shortest track. The pitchy darkness was clear to him. Did he strike the crossing by sight or smell? The Lord that led him alone could tell. He dodged the timber whene'er he could, but the timber brought us to grief at last. I was partly stunned by a log of wood that struck my head as it drifted past, and I lost my grip of the brave old grey, and in half a second he swept away. I reached a tree where I had to stay and did a perish for 2 days hard, and lived on water but Mongrel Grey. He walked right into the homestead yard at dawn next morning and gazed around with the child on top of him, safe and sound. We kept him now for the wife to ride. Nothing too good for him now, of course. Never a whip on his fat old hide, for she owes the child to that old grey horse. And not old Tyson himself could pay the purchase money of Mongrel Grey. Yeah, wow, that's a really lovely poem. It's kind of like sad and happy at the same time. And that was published in the Australian Pastoralists Review on the 15th of December, 1896. What else have we got coming up in the next few months here at the Australian Poetry Hall of Fame? Well, we've got the Trout Festival on the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th of October. And we've also got the Poets on the Mountain Festival on the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th of November. So, yeah, keep tuned for events happening on the website, australianpoetryhalloffame.com.au. All right, we've got Rio Grande's last race and Pioneers, which is the last poem of the evening. Rio Grande's last race. Now, this was what Macpherson told while waiting in the stand, a reckless rider overbold, the only man with hands to hold, the rushing Rio Grande. He said, "This day I bid goodbye to bit and bridle rein, to ditches deep and fences high, for I have dreamed a dream and I shall never ride again. I dreamed last night I rode this race that I today must ride, and can't ring down to take my place. I saw full many an old friend's face come stealing to my side. Dead men on horses, long since dead, they clustered on the track. The champions of the days long fled, they moved around with noiseless tread, bay chestnut, brown and black. And one man on a big grey steed rode up and waved his hand. Said he, 'We help a friend in need, and we have come to give a lead to you and Rio Grande. For you must give the field the slip, so never draw the rein, but keep him moving with the whip, and if he falter, set your lip and rouse him up again. But when you reach the big stone wall, put down your bridle hand and let him sail. He cannot fall, but don't you interfere at all. You trust old Rio Grande.' We started, and in front we showed the big horse running free. Right fearlessly and game he strode, and by my side those dead men rode, whom no one else could see. As silently as flies a bird, they rode on either hand. At every fence I plainly heard the phantom leader give the word, "Make room for Rio Grande." I spurred him on to get the lead. I chanced full many a fall, but swifter still each phantom steed kept with me at a racing speed. We reached the big stone wall, and there the phantoms on each side drew in and blocked his leap. Make room, I loudly cried. But right in front they seemed to ride. I cursed them in my sleep. He never flinched. He found it game. He struck it with his chest, and every stone burst out in flame, and Rio Grande and I became as phantoms with the rest. And then I woke, and for a space all nerveless did I seem, for I have ridden many a race, but never one at such a pace as in that fearful dream. And I am sure as man can be that out upon the track those phantoms that men cannot see are waiting now to ride with me, and I shall not come back, for I must ride the dead men's race and follow their command. 'Twere worse than death, the foul disgrace, if I should fear to take my place today on Rio Grande. He mounted, and a jest he threw, with never sign of gloom, but all who heard the story knew that Jack Macpherson, brave and true, was going to his doom. They started, and the big black steed came flashing past the stand, all single-handed in the lead. He strode along at racing speed, the mighty Rio Grande. But on his ribs the whalebone stung, and madness it did seem, and soon it rose on every tongue that Jack Macpherson rode among the creatures of his dream. He looked to left and looked to right as though men rode beside, as Rio Grande with foaming flecks white raced at his jumps in headlong flight and cleared them in his stride. But when they reached the big stone wall, down went the bridle hand, and loud we heard Macpherson call, "Make room or half the field will fall. Make room for Rio Grande." He's down, and horse and man lay quite side by side. No need the pallid face to scan. We knew with Rio Grande he ran the race the dead men ride. Well, his dream came true. The sketch that was published on the 16th of December 1896, and it even comes with an original illustration by Stanley Berkeley. Well, this is the last one of the night, or the day, whatever it is where you're listening. And this was called Pioneers. They came of bold and roving stock that would not fixed abide. They were the sons of field and flock since ere they learnt to ride. We may not hope to see such men in these degenerate years as those explorers of the bush, the brave old pioneers. 'Twas they who rode the trackless bush in heat and storm and drought. 'Twas they that heard the master word that called them further out. 'Twas they that followed up the trail the mountain cattle made and pressed across the mighty range where now their bones are laid. But now the times are dull and slow, the brave old days are dead, when hardy bushmen started out and forced their way ahead by tangled scrub and forest grim towards the unknown west, and spied the far-off promised land from off the range's crest. Oh, ye that sleep in lonely graves by far-off ridge and plain. We drink to you in silence now as Christmas comes again. The men who fought the wilderness through rough, unsettled years, the founders of our nation's life, the brave old pioneers. And that was published in the Town and Country Journal on the 19th of December, 1896. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And if you've liked that, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment like 777 or something lovely. We love you, Thundercloud. Or we love Banjo Paterson in the comments. I don't care what you leave, but please, because it helps the metrics, you know. And then more people get to see poetry. That's the whole idea of me asking you to like and comment instead of so more people get to see poetry, right? Because then I get more followers, gets more metrics, it gets spread around, and more people can fall in love with poetry. Yeah, wow, amazing, hey? All right, I'm Thundercloud. Thank you for joining us tonight on Chillin Tuesday, washing away the garbage, leaving rainbows after rain. Yes, you know it, man. Mum calls me.